Hello, everyone. Welcome to another model spec meeting. This one's kind of special because, in case you missed it, the model spec has been passed. It is now officially a CNCF sandbox project. So, congratulations to everyone, and thank you for being part of that. Of course, this is just kind of getting us to the starting line, but still, it's an exciting place.
Yeah, congratulations to everyone. So we should have the timeline and steps in about how to move the project to the model bank organization, right?
You mean like
Um,
the onboarding, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there will be an onboarding once this closes. There will be an onboarding issue that the CNCF is gonna open, and as part of that, they're gonna send us instructions on what to move, where to move, and all that kind of information.
Okay.
Yeah, it
So
shouldn't
we're
be
just
too
following.
hard. There's normally about 50-ish things on it, but I think most of them we won't have to worry too much about because this is a specification. It doesn't have a lot of the other things that a kind of active project would have. So it should be pretty painless, I think, for us.
Yeah, um, the like the trademarks and uh, website and so on and so forth are, those are the ones that takes time usually.
Yeah. We just went through this with KitOps as well, so we're fairly well familiar with it now.
Great.
Okay, so I guess let's jump into the agenda. The first item is to understand Brandon's comments in issue 54 on Raw. Uh, Someone want to kick off the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, basically, from my understanding at least, what the comment is saying is that we don't need the .raw suffix and can just say it's otherwise unspecified. So it's not a tar, it's not tar gzip, it's not tar zst. Um, and so there's basically no type, which is how we're treating raw, right? Like the raw is it's binary data, otherwise undefined, and up to the tool on how to handle it. So basically, if we just drop raw from the
Media
media
type.
type, then nothing really changes, and we're not over specifying, as he says, in terms of what does raw mean in this context, that sort of thing. To me,
Yeah,
it makes sense. I'm also kind of indifferent on it. I don't think it's that big of a deal either way, but yeah.
for what it's worth, I do think having been through a couple different specification projects in the past, over specifying is one of the biggest dangers to success early on. I always think of it as you can always add more specification, but removing it is tricky. People come to depend on it. And so I don't know. I think in general we should be careful about adding more specification until we're absolutely sure there's not a way to use what we have.
I am also like it's a semantic difference in the sense that like it's not a semantic difference in the sense that it actually means the same thing if you have the raw or not raw in there, but also it keeps the um, like for me it keeps the specification a little bit more often open to further enhancements in the future where we can say, hey, you know what, if you want to add more media types that are more specific, like the tar zip, and so on and so forth, I think that would be the way to go. So, um, like subgroups of raw would be interesting. For instance, the model runner is using the .ggof at the moment. So I think it kind of keeps that door open as well. So I like that. But otherwise, I don't think it's a big deal for me whether we keep the raw or not. But not having it there is seems like has advantages.
Yeah, and one thing that came up as I finally got around to testing the Podman artifact mounting. And one thing that came up while I was generating the artifacts for that is that we currently don't have a raw file that is gzipped or a raw file that has, ZSD compression. Uh, Tacking on the plus gzip to, raw plus gzip makes sense to me. Not having any like thing to anchor onto there feels weird. So I don't know how we handle that necessarily either. Although it could just
Would it?
be, V1 plus gzip plus ZST, etc.
Yeah, but wouldn't the
So
having
I
the
think
gzip or
Brandon's.
ZSD? Yeah, go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just saying that wouldn't the gzip actually kill against the whole purpose of raw? Actually,
It would ruin the purpose of raw as we've designed it currently, but it doesn't in general. Nothing stops you from passing in a gzipped file instead of a raw file.
that's right. People have done weirder things. That's right.
Yeah. How weird do you want to let people be when using the spec? Sorry, Feng, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brandon's most concern is that raw is not really a media type. So that's why he wants to remove it, right? But the raw use case is, I believe the use case is valid at this point, and as we want to use it for the model weights, at least those gigafiles cannot, gigabyte layers cannot be properly handled without with any tar or compression algorithms, right?
Yeah, I read it the same way, Peng. Just more that it was more semantic that .raw seemed pointless to him to have as a media type, even though like you said, the use case is valid, but just no media type does as much and keeps things more open.
Yeah.
I guess, is
Yeah, I
anybody?
think on the initial PR, I did also propose octet stream, which is what you would use for generic binary data when you're transmitting like a HTTP request. That is at least a recognizable type, but yeah, I'm happy with whatever we choose here. Minor semantic differences, as we've said. Sorry, Brad, I interrupted you.
No, I was actually just going to basically ask if I assume in this meeting we're going to try and get to a closing on this. And so I was just going to ask, I guess, if anybody felt strongly that we should keep the .raw media type, since it seems like we're all in agreement that the raw use case makes sense, but that the media type seems to unnecessarily close things. Um, I wasn't sure, Angel, if you'd made your earlier point uh, about the work you've done with Podman meant that you were in favor of keeping the raw media type, or you were providing context to like an actual use case context.
I think from my perspective, like, yeah, that's kind of something that came up, but I don't think it's important. I don't think it really tilts the scales here. So we can make we can make no media type on the like we can make no specific type on the end work. We can choose something else. It's not that big of an issue, so I'm happy with whatever.
Anga, can you remind me the octet stream media type that you had? Like it would be V1 model
Just instead
flow.
of raw, it would be octet stream.
Okay.
which is just a stream of binary data,
Yeah.
which like semantically is what we're describing with the raw type. It's a little clumsier maybe, and maybe a little uglier, but we could do that. Or again, model.v1 with nothing afterwards works as well.
Yeah. I mean, the octet stream, I'm okay with that one too.
The raw use cases we've talked about are for streaming, are they not?
So I think that's a different subject that we brought up as well, but let's discuss that after this, because this is basically just naming whether we want to keep the raw or use something else, or just remove the raw monocle, the prefix or postfix, and use the raw type without any uh, specific postfix.
Yeah, I read
It's more
the
of a this
comments
is a
on
naming
the.
this is a
Sorry.
naming discussion.
Yeah, naming is hard.
That's why it's so difficult. That's why it's so difficult. Yes.
Yep.
Sorry, Peng, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I'm reading the comments on the Google Doc, the meeting notes. I'm not sure who typed it. Maybe it's Southern, but I also see proposed for MISC, opaque, or other. So we 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 kind of have multiple choices here, but we need to decide on one, right?
Oh, I think,
Hank,
sorry, that's the second agenda item, isn't it?
and Hank, what do you think about the octet
Yes, it's
stream?
the second agenda.
Oh, sorry.
Hank, what do you think about octet stream instead of raw?
Actually, I don't have preference. Octet octet streaming. Is it an INA media type? I'm not sure about that. I do see octet stream somewhere in HTTP, I believe.
I mean,
Yes,
it's
it's
essentially the
IN,
binary.
yes.
Yeah, so I would say yeah, it may be better, even though it is for streaming, but actually it's
Well,
an
I mean,
it's an
it is
area
a.
media type.
I mean, it's a well-known MIME type, right? So, as it's not specifically for streaming, it just is the named octet stream.
But it's not streaming, I think.
No, it's not for streaming. Like the content type, octet stream it just means a binary file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a well-known MIME type essentially.
Yeah. In that sense,
Okay.
that it sounds better than raw, right?
Yeah, it
I
seems more
mean,
specific.
yeah, it's actually, but now I found it. It's actually defined as part of RFC 2046 as arbitrary binary data.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Octet stream, yeah.
As part of the MIME description, so multiple purpose internet mail extensions description. It's a well-known MIME type.
And
So
in browser land, it's basically for save as files. It's application/octet stream there, but our
yeah,
equivalent would be model weights/octet stream.
yeah, yeah. Let's make that change. Let's instead
Yeah.
of raw use octet stream. I think that is a better name
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense. We're sticking with standards. I like it.
That's awesome. What do you
Can
think?
we left
Sorry.
a comment in that issue page so that background may know our decision.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. We'll do that.
Uh, uh, I think it's very difficult to say the name. For my opinion, I only care about the production system because raw is important for the system.
I mean,
Yeah,
these are
we
mem
all agree
types and
that
media types.
the use case is valid.
Like,
We all agree on that. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the this is not about the use case. This is a naming decision, and to be honest, like nobody is gonna ever say the whole media type. No end user will ever see it probably. So it's just for
Yeah.
anyone who needs to read the spec.
Yes. It's mostly
Okay,
right
then
now,
it's
it's
okay
just
for
how
me.
we convince ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. So Gorkam, you're going to respond to the issue?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'm now doing that actually as
Okay.
we speak.
Thank you.
Okay, then we can move on to talk about the second PR, which is PR 53. And this is about adding media type for unknown file types. There's some suggestions in the agenda doc for different naming. So I guess I'll open it up to folks to debate.
Yeah, I think I had a few comments on that PR or issue. My opinion was largely that explicitly calling something unknown or uncategorized to me doesn't necessarily make sense. But I mean, for context, what we do in KidOps currently is if we're not sure what something is, we just lump it into code because code is kind of general purpose. It can be config files, it can be executable artifacts, it can be actual code. And that's been sufficient thus far. We haven't run into cases where we need to tell ourselves, oh, we don't know what this file is. Thinking in the context of we are, ultimately sticking these into runtime environments, sticking these into containers. Um, I don't know that we would necessarily treat an unknown type differently from a code type. Are there cases where we like what's the special treatment that an unknown type would get in the model spec specification that for example, code type would not? I understand like the semantic, oh, this doesn't neatly fit into any category, but I don't know functionally how we would do anything different with it if it's unknown. To me, unknown suggests, oh, you should just discard this layer or ignore this layer, at which point it shouldn't be part of the packaging process anyways, because why store it if you're not going to use it?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I agree. I agree with most of you. I think we need a new type to act as a catch-all because our packaging system cannot be just returning an error and quit. It's not acceptable in our production system. We need a new type to as a catch-all choice because we can't return an error for in this scenario.
But in that
oh,
case, does anything change if you just ignore the file?
I
Tim, do
think
you
first,
want?
yes, first we cannot ignore the file because it may be useful for in production, and we need to pack it in the same package, and because then that is what user provides us to package. So
Okay, but
that's one thing. But another thing about an ending, regardlessly to the code media type, my concern is that it's not how we will proceed with the unknown media type. It's that how we will proceed with the code media type. It is possible that we will add some specific code specific action to deal with the code media type, and then may not be applicable to the unknown or mix or whatever opaque media type we are talking about here.
Yes.
So we cannot just blindly say this, hey, this is code.
So for the use case, is the use case that it is a file of which we don't really recognize that needs to be processed together with everything on the model weights, like wherever the model weights goes or extracted, packaged, unpackaged, it needs to be packaged as part of it? Or is it that we just don't know what it is and it may be processed together with the model weights or not? Because those
A
are
lot
two
it's not.
different
actually. Yeah,
cases.
we do not know if it has to be processed together with the weights. That's a point. So we actually we don't know how user will use it, but the user needs it. So that's why we need to package it.
But I'm
So
confused. There, you can package it regardless. I think that like unknown doesn't actually help a user to know how to use it either. Um, like uh, like there's no context for unknown. So
yeah,
I guess I don't
user will
under
not just extract the single unknown layer. Usually it will pull the entire model image and unpack it, unpack all the layers, and it will use those files.
but I guess then why does it matter? Like the whole point of the layers is to allow you to separately unpack the layer and know what to do with it because of its definition. Unknown just seems to defeat that whole purpose. Like you could have those files. Like presumably, if I know what to do with the file and it's in a layer, um, then I'm going to pull that layer. And if I don't know what to do with that file and it's in a layer, then I'm not going to use the file. And having it in, I don't understand, kind of like Angel was saying, I don't understand how the behavior is helped for the end user by having unknown. I get that it's nice to feel like we've added something that people can use to file stuff that's unknown, but but it has no actual value to the end user that I can see.
Oh, that's because you are looking at it, you are thinking people will use just the unknown layer, just pull the unknown layer and unpack it and use it.
No, not even
But
good, not even necessarily just the unknown layer. My point is that like if if the creator of the model pack thinks that this unknown file, this file of an unspecified purpose has something more to do with code, they can put it in the code layer. If they think it has more to do with data sets, they'll put it in the data set layer. If they think it has more to do with docs, they'll put it in the docs layer. In each case, if I don't know anything about this project and I pull and I look at this package, it gives me at least some context for what the packager thought that file would be valuable for. I might still look at that file and I don't know what it is, so I'm not going to use it. So I ignore it. That's fine. Unknown seems like the worst of both worlds because then the packager is saying, I don't know what this thing is, but I'm packaging it anyway. Well, okay, but why? And then as the user of that, I look at it and go, I don't know what this thing is. And the packager gave me no hints because it's just unknown. So why the hell is it there? Like it kind of feels like there's some point at which you have to assume that the packager at least understands roughly where this thing belongs.
Because the package is in the low level of the system, they may not know the purpose of the file. But the user and the provider of the files, model files, they are AI developers. They know the file types. This is the
Sure.
reason.
And I said, so when I said producer, maybe we're just using different terms. The person who packages this, the person who creates this particular package, I don't mean us. I mean like, you know,
Yeah.
some person creates this package and they add I'm just looking at the PR, they add a .nemo file. Presumably that person knows what a .nemo file is for, and presumably it is more about the code or more about the docs or more about the model or more about the data set, for example. And so they should put it in that place. But putting it in unknown, that doesn't then help me as the consumer of that package because the producer of that package is giving me no hint. I have nothing to do with that. Whereas at least if the Nemo file is in with docs, then I'll know, okay, so this is some kind of docs-like file, and I'll look at it from that perspective. Or if it's in code, I'll think about, oh, it maybe goes something to do with the rest of the code base. That's helpful information that I don't get if it's just unknown.
Yes, maybe the unknown is not suitable. Maybe we can change it to other name.
Well, I guess my point though is that whether you call it unknown or miscellaneous or other, any of these terms, by definition, they have no context. And my point is that the value of having these layers is that the layer itself has some context to it. So if I'm a data scientist and I get this project, I consume it, I at least have some hint about what each of the things in each of these layers is related to. Now, I can still choose to ignore any one of the files. I can still choose to decide that I want that Nemo file for me, not in a code layer, but in the docs layer. That's where it makes sense to me. And so I just repackage this and move the Nemo file to the docs layer. But I don't understand how MISC or other or unknown helps the consumer. It seems to only help a producer who doesn't want to try and think about where a file goes, which is a bad use case, honestly. Like the producer of the should spend time and try and do their best to put files where it will be most helpful in context.
And like there are two things on this, right? A model pack is going to be produced once and hopefully used multiple times. If we are encouraging the producer to package things without enough metadata, then we're not helping the consumers of the model packs.
Can we put the context in other place rather than the media type name, like annotation?
What do you mean by contents? Like annotations have size limits, so
Okay.
yeah. It depends on the
Actually,
content.
let me explain our internal use case for this. We are literally converting like something like top 100 Hugging Face models into model spec packaged images, and we see quite often some files that we do not know for certain where we can put it. That and we're actually missing this context, and we think even if the original author of the model weights of the Hugging Face weights did report it, for example, they cannot simply categorize, for example, Nemo into code or into documents. It doesn't fit. So
Yeah,
my proposal,
then
can we do it like this? We and something like unknown or MISC meter type here, and once we have more concrete idea on what some of the file can be categorized as, we can define new meter types to specifically annotate it. But we
So I think
can
what I don't like about that though, Peng, is that you're passing the problem. Like it allows you, essentially you're not solving the problem, you're just passing it on to every consumer. And I think we should try and avoid making that easy for people
um
to.
no, actually for the user of the model image, they do know how to use it. It's just that they do not know, because right now we only have a few meter types categories, and those files cannot fall into these already defined categories.
Well,
So
no, sorry,
do we
let's be clear.
specifically introduce one meter type for each of the with each of the types we see right now? Because we don't know
What is
how many of them, and we don't know how how because I believe part of some of them can be categorized properly. Some of them still feel kind of out of the existing spaces. And do we plan to handle it in model spec?
so? But our layers are for intents or purposes, right? So if what you're saying is true, that there is a file that doesn't fit to a documentation purpose, a code purpose, a dataset purpose, or a model purpose, but there's a file that is related to the AI ML lifecycle there's a purpose that is related to the AI ML lifecycle that we are not handling, right? That's
Yeah.
what it would mean. But what is that purpose? Like, what is the intent of that file if it is not used as documentation or code or dataset or model? What is it used for?
So I think in all the cases you've provided
Like,
in the PR, these are all files that seem like they are best belonging in a code layer. And if your point is correct that the user knows how to use them, and if your other point is correct, which is that, and I think it is, that most of these cases that you're describing for this particular use case, people are going to pull the entire model pack, then it really doesn't matter what layer they're in, and putting them in unknown doesn't help in any way. It actually just makes it more confusing. So I would argue put them in code by default, in other words, because you're pulling from Hugging Face, which is essentially a code directory listing. Um, and as I said, if people strongly disagree with that, then they'll repackage it in a different way. And that's their business. That's why we created model packs, so people could do that. But losing the
Yeah, just
context,
to
throwing the context away is not helpful for anybody. Sorry.
yeah, just to add another piece of context here, in the KitOps project, we have the notion of filters. So in our case, we're not always unpacking the whole model pack. Um, there are cases where you can pull just the, for example, documentation layers of a model pack and read any READMEs or documentation license files, etc., about the like read that stuff before you pull down the model weights. Similarly, you can pull down just the code or just the data sets or just the model. And just the model, for example, we use for the case of, oh, we just want to run it. We don't really care about anything else. So we'll just pull the model in and nothing else. So in these cases, would we have like, if we wanted to support this in KitOps, for example, would we also enable you to filter based on unknown? Would unknown always be included no matter what you're unpacking? Or it's hard to handle it at every level as soon as you introduce uncertainty in the packaging process. Um, the way KitOps handles unknown files is it just sticks them in a code layer. Usually they're small enough that if you get them as a side effect of pulling the code layers, it's not a huge difference. Uh, the one you really want to avoid a lot of the time is the model weights. So there's no real issue there. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
but
I guess I'm just not.
yeah, the reason why model kits don't have that issue is because we have model parts that are additional files to model weights.
Well, but the model pack spec has a model layer and it also has a model weights layer, which is kind of semantically equivalent.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
So looking at like a standard Hugging Face repo, the way I would categorize it and the heuristics that Kit currently has is if we notice a giant file with, one of the standard file suffixes like safe tensors, that's clearly the model weights. Uh, if we have a model weights and a bunch of, JSON, XML, text files, we categorize those as model parts, so related to the model and unpacked with the model. Um, Markdown, PDF, text documents are categorized as documentation, and anything else is categorized as code. And then maybe you get some C files and a Nemo file and a big mixed mishmash of things. But if we don't know how to handle it, then there's nothing we can do more. You can always pull it, unpack it, repackage it by defining where things go, and there you go. The unknown type just complicates every flow because then we have to think about when do we unpack just like when are these unknown layers um, unpacked from unpacking a model pack. I think that's kind of what Brad was getting at.
Yeah, I think that's it. We have to think about this from the perspective of the consumer. The consumer is who we're building this for. And so the consumer will always need more context than the provider. Um, and so I think removing context by creating an unknown lets the provider off the hook, but then passes the problem to the consumer. And I think that's exactly the type of thing we should try and avoid.
Okay, my concern about moving this all into code is that code is mostly, as I see it, texts, and we're actually quite often dealing with binary files. For example, the .dat file.
But I think that then you just answered your own question because then it's a very reasonable thing as a provider for you to say, as guidance, code is usually text files and binary files belong more in model and data set. So the .dat file, let's say, or the .nemo file is binary, let's imagine.
Yeah.
Then I'm not going to put it in code. I'm going to put it in data set. Maybe it's not exactly a data set, but it's binary. And so as long as you give people those contexts, you can do that. But once you have unknown, you can't say everything in unknown is binary because it's unknown. That doesn't make sense. So you're going to have a mishmash of things in there. And that so then it just kind of unravels. So I think you can make those decisions then as a provider to say, I'm going to make the decision on unknown files based on binary, non-binary, or where they are in the directory tree, or any other thing I want.
Yeah, the binary unbinary category might work for us. And Chen, what do you think? We
But
can.
the issue with binary slash non-binary is there are I can imagine binary files that should be models. I can imagine binary files that should be data sets. If we say the unknown type catches the binary files, then you have your models, your data sets, your code, and then the unknown category that contains potentially any of the other three categories and a
No,
mix
sorry,
of them.
that was not what I was trying to get at, Angel. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. All I was saying was that rather than use the unknown type, so don't use unknown type,
Mhm.
but when you find an unknown file, a file that you don't know what it's for, if that file is a text file, then you as provider making the model pack put it into the code layer because the code layer is generally just all text type files. And if you find some unknown file that you don't know what it is and it's binary, and most of the other binary stuff is in data sets or models, then you stick it in data sets, let's say. I guess you could put in models. But you as the provider can have that kind of heuristic that you use to avoid the need to have unknown.
Yeah, I kind of agree that for binary files we can put it in places like meta types like weights, and non-binary text files we can just switch it to the documents, and that Does feel right. Yeah. So what do you think?
Can we add annotation for that, just like Wang Xudong said?
The annotation of what would the annotation say?
The annotation of we add a annotation definition for the media type. The annotation the content of the annotation is something like unknown maybe or other name.
Or like something that hints that, oh, I
Yeah.
packaged this
Yes.
as a model, but that I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
yeah? Okay. Um, yeah, I need to think about like, uh, I mean, you're okay. So what you're proposing is, let me just rephrase. We do our best guess to put something into a layer, whether that's doc or something else. But then if we are not sure, then we add an annotation and say, hey, during packaging, I thought this was code, but I'm not sure. Here's the annotation that says, yeah, I'm not sure, but is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Like a way to mark the layer to say that, hey, this could be unknown, be careful.
Yes. What do you think, Peng Tao?
I mean, that doesn't sound horrible to me. I mean, it may work. It may have actually uses in automation as well. So that sounds okay to me. I don't know what others are thinking. Angel?
Yeah, I think we should be careful when about the name of the annotation because it might destroy the purpose of putting it into code or weights. Or but
Like, I mean, it's basically what we need to be very careful with the wording. It's
yeah,
like saying that, oh, I don't have confidence on this
yes, yeah,
layer.
maybe a confidence score or what something like
Yeah,
that.
something like yeah, something like that. I'm not sure if this is. I'm not very confident this is code, but I'm gonna put it as code, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I mean that works, and it may actually have some benefits uh, to um, to automation in the future. Yeah. And Gal, Brad, or anyone else has any ideas on the annotation?
I mean, yeah, I have no issues with the annotation. I'm mostly opposed to generating a whole new media type and category of thing enshrined in the spec. Annotation you can drop or update, or um, you could scan your model kits and say, "Oh, this was low confidence. You know, let's recategorize now that our heuristics are better." But having an unknown layer in the spec itself just makes it look like we don't know what to do and we don't know what you should do.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a wart on the spec and
Yeah,
any
no,
artifacts that include it.
I like the annotation. I can actually think of two or three ways you could potentially use that kind of an annotation. So
Yeah.
yeah, it seems a little bit more flexible, a little bit more generally useful. And it seems to solve the issue you guys are having. So.
Yeah.
yeah. So let's go
Uh,
with the annotation. Yeah.
yeah. Let's go with the annotation. So I guess a PR is due.
So that PR will be closed and a new PR will be open to add the annotation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we discuss a little bit about the annotation name because I'm really not confident about how to define it.
Yeah. I like the word confidence on this annotation. I don't know how we put the other words to there, but like a categorization confidence, layer confidence, or packaging confidence. Okay, naming is hard. So, but I like the word confidence in that annotation.
Um, if I may, an additional proposal is sort of like if you for the layer you add the author, you could say something like automatic classification, something. So you're not explicitly saying that is a confidence thing, but people might defer that that layer file or whatever it is, if it is a tar, has been sort of like automatically being provided. So there was not a human that sort of like a vet that is classified correctly. That's also another way to think about it if you want.
Okay, so it would be automation. What was the word that you used?
Author,
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Hmm.
because I think if I remember correctly, there is something similar already in Aussie spec for author or things like that. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like if you add it to the layer, then if you're looking at the manifest for the pack, then you could say, oh, I know that, I don't know, this bot or this automation may have some limits and it was classified correctly because at the end of the day, you will need somebody, typically somebody human, to look at why maybe a file is in a layer and not in another. Just an idea.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that is basically recycling another purpose for this because author is, you basically, it's what it says, the author of the layer, right? Or the creator of the layer. So for me, that would be recycling a different purpose for this purpose, which is always in the long term an issue because there's only 7 of us in this conversation right now, and the rest of the world won't remember the context on this, and they won't remember.
Yeah.
So, like, I would rather have an annotation that is purpose built to convey this that it is like we don't have confidence on packaging at the on this.
Yeah, I agree with Gorkan. I believe we need an explicit way to say we are in this situation instead of having some explicit im implication somewhere by the author and fishing.
Like a layer confidence, um, something like that,
Or yeah, or media type confidence.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if we can use something like untested. Um, like the downside with confidence, or maybe this is an upside, I'm not sure. But if we use confidence, then I think we have to assume that some people will use that to mean I don't know really where this file should go. And other people will use it to mean I know exactly what this file is. I know exactly where it should go. I'm just not confident that this is the right file. And those are kind of very different things. Maybe that's okay. Maybe it's actually useful that you can do both. My other thought was with kind of untested or unvetted, that you're getting across that I, as the provider, have not actually tried this. So I put these things in this layer, but you kind of use at your own risk or do your own homework kind of with it. I I don't know. I'm not sure which is better,
Yeah,
but
Yeah, maybe media type untested.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a true or false
Okay.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that can work for me as well.
Okay.
Let's
Okay.
go with that. Let's go with that and see what the community at large thinks when the PR is open.
Yeah, so Chen, can you open a new PR to end this?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I've captured all that in the doc. Um, right. Were there any other topics that we wanted to talk about?
The only thing that was left is I have a PR for removing recommended mm, uh, from raw types because right now it says if the files are large, the recommended type is raw type on the specification. I don't really want to recommend the raw type because it actually breaks a lot of things uh, on the uh, on for instance on the OCI runtimes part. So let's just remove the recommended sentence out of the spec for now or forever before we know the situation with runtimes and the general adoption as well. If people require TARs and we're recommending not to have TARs, we may actually be in a place where uh, the adoption is very low. And then the other subject was, do we need raw types on doc and code? Um, and I'd like to drop them, but we haven't reached a conclusion on that yet.
Yeah, first on the removing the recommendation on the media type, I totally agree that we need to stop recommending this until we have confidence in the runtime part.
Yeah.
And also for the raw type on doc, I believe we need a new PR to add to adjust it into Octet
Yeah.
streaming, and in that PR, I hope we can only add it use the media type for weights, right?
Okay.
And maybe data sets that's another thing, but those two are the only place that we need the binary format.
Okay. Okay. So as we move to Octet, we just drop the raw type.
Yeah.
Okay. That works.
And then
All right.
Octet Stream, sorry, I missed this. Octet Stream would be used only for which layers? Just model or model and dataset?
Model and data
I
set.
heard.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I'm capturing the notes correctly. Okay, so we're agreed that we can, I mean, we'll be removing raw altogether, but we're agreed that the octet stream will only be used for model and data set layers. Good. And we're going to remove, and we're also agreed that we're going to remove the recommended sentence from the spec as refers to what will be known as octet stream, I guess.
Yeah. I have a PR that removes the recommended open already. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
I'm giving you
Anything
+1.
else?
Yeah.
Anything else people have? Awesome. This is a good meeting. It's the first time we've used all the time, but this was super helpful. Thank you, everyone, for the collaborative discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Have
thanks
a
all.
good
Good
day.
discussion.